Satheesh, are you there?
Hi, Q. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. Nice to see you after maybe 7 years, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Are you okay?
Yeah. Good. Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So because this time is already 2 p.m. and then maybe we should start right now. And very early good morning, I guess, in UK, Professor Satheesh.
Yeah. That's okay. We are always early starters. That's okay.
Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so good afternoon in Indonesia and very early morning or good morning in UK. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to you all in this webinar series, JKSA webinar series, organized by Jurnal Kimia Sains dan Aplikasi, Chemistry Department, Faculty of Sciences and Mathematics, Diponegoro University, Indonesia. And then the title of today's webinar is Functionalisation of Smart Materials for Textile Wastewater Treatment. And before the presentation begin, allow me to introduce the speaker. So I will share the screen. Okay, Professor Satheesh Krishnamurthy, FRSC, FIMMM, Chair of Energy Technology, School of Engineering and Innovation, the Open University, Penables Building, Milton Keynes, UK, and then academic qualification, PhD in Chemical Engineering and Advanced Materials, Newcastle University, UK. Yeah, Prof Satheesh is my senior actually, and then he got BSc and MSc degree in Physics, University of Madras, India. Professional qualification, I'm sorry if I'm wrong, Prof Satheesh, because I take this in your homepage. So in 2017 till now, a chair of energy technology, School of Engineering and Innovation, STM faculty at the Open University, UK. 2014, a senior lecturer in energy, School of Engineering and Innovation, STM faculty at the Open University, UK. 2012, a lecturer in energy, School of Engineering and Innovation, STM faculty at the Open University, UK. A senior research fellow at Dublin City University, Ireland, and postdoctoral experience at Trinity College, Dublin, Ireland. And then the publication, I took this data from Scholar and also from Scopus, Prof Satheesh. So total number citation is almost 8,000, and then it's index 25, and then from the Scopus, total number of citation around 6,000, and then its index is 21. And then the research interest are synthesis and structure property, relation of nanostructures and nanocomposites, material science and application of nanomaterials, energy storage, photocatalysis, surface engineering of nanoscale system through atmospheric pressure plasma system. So everyone, if you would like to know more about Professor Satheesh, you can just visit his homepage here. Okay, maybe there's also now the floor is yours. Professor Satheesh, you have 40 minutes for a presentation and the rest 20 minutes for discussion. Okay, the floor is yours.
Yep. Thank you, Q. Assalamualaikum, everyone, and I hope you can see my screen. I presume yes, or I need to swap the display. Is it? Can you see the full screen?
No, it's still separate in the two parts. We cannot see the full screen right now.
Okay, let me see. Swap this. Can you see the full screen now?
Not yet. Okay, that's better. Now clear. Full screen already.
Yeah, that's good. So yeah, I will try to keep it keep it short. So there are, thank you so much for the introduction, Yaku, and it is my pleasure to give a talk in this area, and particularly to Indonesia, which I have never been done before. And hopefully I can excite some community here. So I am working as a professor, an engaged professor to be appointed in OU history itself. And my research work is focusing on how we can use or recycle and reuse of existing materials. That's one of the reasons why I took wastewater treatment as a challenge, and I have other projects on recycling of lithium-ion batteries as well. So some of our articles has come as a cover page in different journals. Just to give a bit of flavor, what is Open University is. As many of you may not even know, Open University is the world's first successful distance education university. It's more than 50 years old. And every year we recruit about 200,000 students. And so far, more than 10 million students have been graduated through our streams. And we are one of the global leaders in open education movement. We do have a campus. So many people thought that Open University will not have any campus. This is our campus. We employ 3,000 research, 3,000 academics and administrative staff. And I live in this building. It's called Venables building, and all my research labs are around here. So we do have a campus. So, okay, my research vision is socially oriented research that has direct benefit to society. Socially oriented transformational research. So I do during my PhDs, and probably Yaku knows as well, during my PhD and postdoc, I was working on synchrotron radiation, understanding the surface and engineering of materials. We published our results in Nature, popular journals, Nature Nanotechnology, Advanced, and others. So we got some really fundamental understanding of the materials. Then I realized that when I started the group, I wanted to make some transformation, how the research can benefit the society immediately. So that's why I was thinking that taking the challenging problems that can solve for next 30 to 40 years, rather than beyond our generation. So that is what the research then started focusing on, what are all the areas which we can do. Then picked up surface engineering of materials, which is our key strengths. Then manufacturing of materials and for energy storage, fuel cells and solar fuels. We have a homemade additive manufacturing or 3D printing. So this is a 3D printing using plasma-based processes and sensors and other things. So when we started, when I started looking at what are all the sustainable development goals which our research can fit in. So we wanted to cut across the SDGs to make sure that we can offer more than one solution. So quality of education, gender equality. So if you see my research groups, I will be very careful in selecting a balance of between male and female ratios. So we have about 13 people working in our research group, and equal importance, about 8 postdocs and 7 PhD students. And we work on clean water sanitation and affordable energy. So how we wanted to make sure that there should be a capacity to think across between the SDGs. So that's why we work on interchangeable things. The material which we produce for clean water and sanitation can also fit into energy. So in one stretch, I wanted to give you an example of what we are doing. I always feel that no one person can do a job. It should be a combination of collaborations and sustainable collaborations, so that there are many things which we can offer to the world which is done only by collaborations. So I collaborate heavily with people here like Cambridge, Berkeley from US, and I'm also a visiting scientist at NASA Ames lab. So in our lab, we have a good plasma processing system, electrochemical methods where we put metal oxides, semiconductors, and we have our own, which I will show you what is APPJ, is atmospheric pressure plasma jet printing. So we do carbon nanotubes, conducting carbon nitrides, gold nitride, and other 2D materials in collaboration with industries where we address the industry related problems. These are all like a funded industry programs. Currently, we have a project with Bank of England on counterfeit notes where we print some quantum dots onto the Bank of England notes, where you just by the creating the linear stress, you can change the color of the thing. So we are just working on a prototype version. Right, all ongoing funded projects. We have quite a lot of funded projects there with European Union, Newton Fund, etc., on recycling of batteries, flexible solar cells, wastewater treatment, and wastewater management. So I will just speak only today about wastewater management. We did the extensive workshop and conferences to understand the problems by inviting industries. These are all the industry people here who are working on textile wastewaters, and then try to understand how this challenge can fit. And then we went to India, and then we invited them to UK, and then we understood the challenges very clearly, what needs to be done. So we picked, because I'm a material scientist and materials engineers, but in order to solve the bigger problem of wastewater treatment, we need to make sure that we work with biotechnologists, so who does the bioremediation process to kill the microbes and also to degrade some of the dye components. So that's the reason why we used biotechnologists, and then my work as a material scientist, and then we picked up SMEs as a Watson who can scale up what we are doing. So if you look at the big picture of particularly the India, it is one of the major textile industry. They estimated about 60 billion. Now it's more than 80 billion in 2020. But consumes 140 liters of water, fresh waters. These are talking about per kg of the finished product. And in the particular case, dyeing is identified as one of the most polluting chain, because there is unsaid reports saying that this is if even after doing some of the recycling process, the components which we are getting out of the dyes are carcinogenic, and sometimes it even hinders the fertility as well. So everything should start like a big picture. This is our big picture. The big picture is this, where you can clearly see that this is a real picture from one of my friends in Bangladesh who took it, and it came in New York Times as well. So here you can clearly see that the factory here across, they are polluting water straight into the streams, and without even processed waters. And this is a very, very scary picture, because this contaminates not only agriculture. You can see all the greeneries here. So there are plants are there, and the banana trees is there. So these are all very important. This will pollute completely the natural resources and many other diseases. So is there a way that science can solve the societal problems? So the answer is, can we use the power of sun? So that's where we are all thinking of how to do this. And we always start small and think big. So then we visited some of the industries, and this is what the wastewater treatment plant looks like. And who are all using is Marks and Spencer's, Gap's, Macy's, Primark, and many other big brands. So to start with, how the system of textile wastewater treatment works is, they do the physical separation of suspended solids, then chemically reacted. Chemical separation will happen between the physical solids. Then we do the biological treatment. Reverse osmosis is a really time-consuming and highly power-consuming process, and then once reverse passes into the brine concentrator, and then evaporation onto pond. this is what is happening here. Excuse me. So the biological treatment is pretty much like a membrane bioreactors, and this membrane bioreactors suspend the solids and the water molecules, and then goes into the reverse osmosis flow and going into the outlet. But this whole process is an expensive process, and not many people are willing to adapt either. So we are proposing, this is about 10 million project which is funded to my group from last year. So we are proposing that instead of after physical separation and before reverse osmosis, we will substitute with photocatalysis, and then directly goes into the solar evaporation bond. Or probably we will take particular reverse osmosis here, keep the biological treatment, and then use photocatalysis. There's a different options which we are working on. I'll tell you how. Before we go into the complex system of photocatalysis and others, I think probably since it's a chemistry department, I'm pretty sure you are familiar with photocatalysis. So photo is light, and catalysis is catalytic material to accelerate the reactions. So we use pretty much like learning the lessons from nature, where the green leaves gets light, and then directly oxidizes with the water molecule, oxidizes into the oxygen and also the CO2 as well. And we use a similar mechanism to shine light on our material, which will have the semiconducting material, which have a defined valence and conduction band. And then when the light is when the light or the photons hit the surface of the material, and you have electron hole pair, there is excitonic effects is happening. This excitonic effects will help in reducing the organic components. So while choosing the material, we would choose come from UV to this is a solar energy distribution pattern. If you see that we have only 43% of the radiation is visible, rest of them are near infrared, etc. But we wanted to use the power of visible and UV to visible and UV to see whether we can tap that light straight away. And what are all the materials which we can respond to this is we need to look at earth-abundant materials, so that we are not working on blue sky research where the material is not earth-abundant even though the efficiency is more. So while choosing this, the natural material which we are using is TiO2, titania in anatase or rutile phase, and then we are working on 2D materials, new 2D materials, including MAS2 and TiO2 to tune the band gap in such a way that we can reduce all these organic components that is coming out of the textile industries. This is when we started thinking about it, we started using titania nanoparticles. And while you are thinking of titania nanoparticles, we wanted to enhance the efficiency, and we wanted to use the power of gold and metal nanoparticles to attach using the surface plasmon resonance with the electron cloud. So if I have time, I will show those results as well. So in terms of photocatalysis, as you can clearly see that electron hole pair, the photocatalytic is what you call, it's initiated by the generation of electron hole pair, which I've already discussed within the semiconductor, upon absorption of a high quality photon onto the system. On the catalyst surfaces, you have a photo-generated electron hole pair that will start to react with the dissolved oxygen in the water. In the water and the dyes to oxidize these organic components at the proximity of the photocatalytic surfaces, and this directly oxidizes the absorbed species and the rate limiting steps reactions in this particular case is the O2 molecules to form superoxide radicals. So these superoxide radicals act as an effective agents in the dye reduction. So we started looking at, if you look at titania, TiO2, pristine titania is not photocatalytic active, and it is photocatalytic active, but it is in the UV range. So we wanted to make sure in the visible range can activate. So I work on thin films. So I do plasma spray of TiO2 onto glass, and then we hydrogenate TiO2 in plasma, and you can clearly see the change of color. Change of wavelength also happens, and this is becoming because of we are creating a titanium 3Ti3 plus state, and it is causes the defects in the surfaces, and that is enhances in the oxygen vacancies. These oxygen vacancies push us towards higher lower band gap and higher visible spectrum. So we were able to get that. And we are also worked on nanowires as well, copper nanowires, copper nanoparticles, Maxine as well, and also on top of TiO2 nanocrystals. So I put a couple of case studies because the time is limited. So we use in-house a very simple reactor vessel. And if you clearly see that in this video, we can clearly see the evolution of oxygen is happening as a function of dye. So the dye goes, and then you can clearly see photocatalytic reaction. And also on top of photocatalytic reaction, if I continue to do this for another 1 hour, I can clearly see complete reduction of the dye, so that the pollutant or degrades. So in case of TiO2, so hydrogen, this is a pristine TiO2, and we annihilate or plasma hydrogenate into the chamber, and then we can clearly see the change in color, as you can clearly see from UV vis a spectroscopy, where pristine TiO2 with 3.3 band gap, 2.5 with hydrogenated. So that has resulted in band induced defects in the lower mid gap state. So this is from this DFT, the density functional theory, you can see that there is a defect induced band gap states. Because of this, the higher electron transfer and lower degradation, lower decay rate happened. So that has promoted the dye degradation to get faster in terms of methylene blue, etc. And we did the silver nanoparticles as well. So tuning the silver nanoparticles from different, as you can clearly see that the size is very important to get the degradation faster. So we did tried different rate constant for methylene blue, and we optimized that's about 6 silver concentration and about 2 nanometers of silver. We were able to get highest degradation. So more information you can see from this paper. So most of the results which we already published, which I'm giving you. The another interesting the area which we are working on, TiO2 mass 2 composites. So everybody might be familiar about molybdenum sulfide. Molybdenum sulfide is another fantastic 2D material systems, and molybdenum sulfide acts as a promoter and TiO2 acts as a catalyst. And because there is currently in the European Union, there is a bill is under discussion. It might be passed that they wanted to put a ban on the titania because they are thinking the titania is leaching out of the surface, and that will cause effects to the lens. So at the nanometer level. So now we wanted to reduce the usage of titanium by promoting another molybdenum sulfide. Molybdenum sulfide is an ideal promoter because it can really can match the band gap between titania and and mass 2. So the idea in this project which we are working is coat mass 2 onto titanium nanoparticles. Mass 2 exfoliation. So we do exfoliate molybdenum sulfide into about like 8 layers. And this 8 layers is very important to get the higher electron transport. And so in this particular bigger scheme is like we use nanofiltration. Remember the first slide which I showed. So we mix the dye pollutant anionic and cationic dike pollutant, and use MOS2 TiO2 in a dark mode for absorption, reduce them into the residual dye pollutant that is more of organics, and then use our 2.5% of MOS2 TiO2 ratios to degrade the dye. And we can see complete degradation of this system, how it is. So we start with a MOS2, like a flower-like structure. This MOS2 is prepared using simple hydrothermal reaction. And then when we when we exfoliate, can clearly see that the exfoliation started with the MOS2 bundles. And this is a clear indication of 0.64 nanometers is that we are able to exfoliate the layers. And when we started putting TiO2, you can clearly see that there is a clear interface of MOS2 TiO2 is happening at the surface. And this is very critical information which we are seeing from this TEM, where the lattice fringes of MOS2 and then TiO2 are evenly mixed here in this area. So those critical results shows that we are clearly forming MOS2 TiO2 composites. And once we started, then we started doing thinking of how the bonding mechanisms are. So this is a typical X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy. If you're not familiar with XPS, it is like you shine X-rays onto the core level of the systems, and then you collect electrons and coming at higher kinetic energy, and you collect the kinetic energy and convert that into the binding energy. And this binding energy information will give clear information on the chemical bonding, ionic states. Chemical shifts will interpret onto what are all the defects associated, or defects, vacancies, or interfaces associated with the particular compound. So in our case, the whole left ACE on molybdenum sulfide compounds. So we go from A is pristine molybdenum sulfide, and then as we go from 2% to 10% of molybdenum, and you can clearly see that the MO6 MO6 plus and MO4 plus are getting prominent as a function of as we lower the components. And this is a very important that the molybdenum MOS2 component is involved in the charge transfer reactions. And similarly, the sulfur as well, we are able to split the sulfur on top of sulfur oxide systems, and then the oxygen vacancy is now created because of the 2% interlayer splitting. So we are able to, if I have the, let me see if the next image is better. So in the particular case, if you see that the interface defects, so these are all the interface defects which we are able to open those particular band interface defects and then put our more sulfur component on that. So these are all like, we are now did some STEEM and also focused on atomic scale structures, and we are able to see those particular defects. And this is published in the Chemosphere journal, and you can clearly see that if you the C by CO values, the C by CO values in particular 20%, 30%, and 50% of MOS2 shows a clear absorption and gets saturation beyond 30% of molybdenum weight percentage, and the highest absorption efficiency of about how much it is, 70 to 73% of methylene blue, as observed in the HRTEM image, the interspace distance, which I already said. So in our particular case, it requires a combination of both higher loading of catalyst, and then the lower loading, higher loading of catalyst for absorption, and then lower load. When we lower load for 2.5%, we will get better photocatalytic activity. So we started doing complete dye discoloration effects with the different control samples and different samples. And you can clearly see from the curve that about like 7.5%, the 91% of the dye is completely degraded under white light conditions. In TiO2, we were working particularly on visible light using mimicking the solar simulator. Here we have started using LEDs. With the LEDs, we were able to discolorate complete methylene blue and also denim dyes, which we are coming from the commercial factories using TiO2 master components. And similarly, we are did with the 10, even with 10%, the efficiency is about 86%, as you can clearly see. So this is a very good results, which we are now able to tune the surface. And all this happening about like 1.5 hours, we are able to completely degrade the dyes. So once we did that, then we thought that we have to do it in a stage-wise batch processing. So we started making different types of linear reactors and did the batch-wise processing on mixed dyes. We started with crystal violet, rhodamine, and methylene orange, and then mix everything together. So that because when you started each and everything has a different heavy metals and ionic components presence. So the heavy metals will be removed by another technique which we are using is called nanofibers. These nanofibers are extracted fibers from palm leaves. And then in our lab, we extract this using electro spraying methods. We extract the nanofibers, and then these nanofibers is when we put in water itself, the dye itself, it will degrade by absorbing the heavy metals and giving the residual dyes. And that residual dyes, which is mixed with all types of different colors, and then we did our photocatalytic experiments. And then we started mixing the dyes, both anionic and cationic dyes, for different periods in stage 1 and stage 2 processes. In stage 1, we are using a dark mode, maybe about 50% of mass 2 TiO2, under light irradiation conditions for 2.5%, and you can clearly see the difference between 50% and the 2.5%. The degradation is very, very quick, and under light conditions. So once we did this, this is another patented technology which we did. So we took the denim blue directly coming from the industry, and we made our own electrodes. So I will tell you what is the difference of this electrode is. This is a mesh type electrodes. We were able to do a plasma printing onto these mesh type electrodes. And I will tell you what is plasma printing is. So we did the plasma printing using a very simple atmospheric pressure plasma printing onto the surfaces to increase the surface area of this. And then we connected both electrocatalysis and the photocatalysis, both combination together to degrade the dyes completely. And we were now completely able to degrade in about like 60 minutes. We are able to degrade, and this flocation is there. This flocation is we are able to now currently remove the flocation as well. And the onset potential is completely, you can clearly see the onset potential and the change in the band gap as well. So which is particularly we did next with CiO2, TiO2 systems. And with the copper catalyst with a normal electrocatalytic system with just simple solar cells, we were able to get hydrogen evolution. We were able to measure the hydrogen coming out of the surface using our gas chromatography, and we wanted to keep it simple. So we used solar cells. As you can clearly see the solar cell here, and then we just illuminate that with a LED light, and we were able to degrade, not only degrade the dyes, but also get the clean hydrogen. But in this case, we were using seawater, and this is currently under publication and patenting. And similarly, we did this with the CGTS on 3D objects using our 3D printed surfaces, and this is currently more investigation is on. Let me present the next 10 minutes or so before I wrap up. So we worked on So when we started looking at what are all the other systems which we can work on, other systems, the copper oxide systems, which is copper is earth abundant material. So we use the power of our plasma system. So this is nothing but a plasma. Plasma is like a torch. So we use, it has a cavity and the glass cavities, and then these glass cavities is covered with 2 electrode systems. And then that is the electrode is nothing but simple copper tapes. So copper tapes with the glass chamber connected to your power source produces a DBD, dielectric barrier discharge. And using this dielectric barrier discharge right on the copper substrates, we started growing copper oxide nanowires. This copper oxide nanowires grows in about 2 minutes. 2 to 5 minutes, we were able to get a really high, good quality copper oxide, single crystal copper oxide nanowires, as you can clearly see. And that is what the schematic is. And we started measuring what is there in the plasma, oxygen plasma, through OES, that is optical emission spectroscopy, and the surface where we can where we can see what are all the radicals. It's just an oxygen, nitrogen, and radicals are there inside the plasma. And when we started looking at the nucleation and the growth, the scene, this tells about how these copper oxide nanowires can be formed. So in our thing is like, this is the substrate here, and the copper oxide acts as a nucleation site. When we started putting plasma of less than 2 minutes onto the system, initially the plasma, the radicals in the plasma goes and interacts with the surfaces of the copper, and then we slightly heat the system about 300 degrees, linear expansion is happening, and then that involves in pulling off the catalyst, the copper oxide from the surfaces. So that is pretty much what we were thinking of happening. And then we also carried this into a normal TEM grid itself, TEM grid, and we were able to get the nanowires onto the grid itself. So these are unique results which can be easily scalable. And it's not only that, we were able to control or surface engineer the nanoparticles or nanowires. Here you can clearly see it's totally hydrophilic. And then we can also make it hydrophobic as well, which I will, if I have time, I will show you. And when we started looking at the X-ray diffraction, there's not much difference on the X-ray diffraction between a pristine copper oxide film and the pristine copper oxide annealed film and the plasma film, because both are showing some similar signatures. Whereas if I started looking at Raman, the Raman will give you what are all the phase identification as well. So we can clearly see what are all the avophonols and others responsible for this. And in particularly, we are able to get a clear signature of Cu2O in terms of copper oxides with plasma. And this is an important result, because what we were thinking as the time goes, these radicals, the copper oxide radicals interacts, nucleates along the bubble, and then forming a shell of Cu2O on top of the nanowires, and then CuO inside. And this is further proved using X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy between the plasma treated and the annealed samples, where we can clearly see that there are 2 different species coming out of Cu2O nature, and then further evidences by oxygen 1s core levels spectrum, where we can see that in hydroxide, this is a hydroxide peak, but within the hydroxide peak, we are able to distinguish the different components. So we haven't sat there straight away. We thought that, okay, the results are getting much more interesting. Why don't we do a NEXAFS? NEXAFS is nothing but near-edge X-ray absorption fine structures, which will give information not only on a particular state. Say, for example, in this case is copper LH. LH is 1s/2p transitions. So NEXAFS will give a clear information on local partial density of states. This local partial density of states involves from the in the band gap states, and also promotion of valence band to conduction band. So, and also talks about the hybridization, what hybridization is happening at the valence levels. So here using the unoccupied density of states, sorry, occupied density of states. No, unoccupied density of states. I'm confused. Sorry. So in terms of copper, the LH is nothing but 1s to 2p 2p to 3d transition. So we are probing copper. So as we all know that the copper is in the metallic states with a little bit of oxide, so there's not much happening in terms of oxygen LH. If you look at the oxygen KH, KH is 1s to 2p transition. So this is oxygen 1s. So we are measuring is 1s electrons to 2p, populating just above the conduction band, that is where the 2p electrons are. So we are populating this and we are scanning this. This cannot be done in the lab. It has to be done in synchrotron. The reason why we are doing it in synchrotron is we are able to tune the energy. So this is an absorption. Here it is an absorption. We call it as an absorption edge. So we wanted to get the electronic strength exactly to the absorption edge, and map it along the until the doublet splitting. So that is where we need the tunable X-rays or tunable photons. That's the reason why we went to the synchrotron. TEY is nothing but total electron yield. We collect all the electrons. Then during this process, the transition, you'll also have a quenching of photons. So those photons are collected as a total photon yield using a photodiode detector. So we started looking at this, and TEY is more of a surface technique. Surface goes, and then whereas TFI goes into the bulk. Okay, in terms of fluorescence yield, we were able to see them. Sorry about this. So we are able to see Cu2O contribution. So that means that the Cu2O goes much more into the core. So that is proved. And this helps not only that, which will also helps in understanding. If you see the further, we did the TEM as well once he started looking at why this is happening. And in particular cases, we are able to create defects due to Cu2O localization. And these are all fantastic results. And this has involved in electrochemical activity. When we started looking at electrochemical activity for both copper oxide with plasma treated and annealed under different pH conditions, the polarization curves, in all polarization curves, we are able to achieve higher current densities. These higher current densities compared to copper oxide, just copper oxide with annealed and then copper oxide nanowires, we can clearly see that these higher current densities are due to the onset of the OER becomes lower, and because of the created defects in the lattice, we were able to get much higher defect densities. When she further looked at the EIS spectrums, cyclic voltammetry, we did the impedance and the chronometry for about 3,000 to 7,000 cycles, and we were able to see that the lifetime of the catalyst is much better. And in terms of if you look at this particular, the chrono at different intervals, here we are thinking that the more CO2 is generated, so CO2O or CO due to the methylene oxide reduction, and we were able to treat it again with plasma to reduce it back in the intermittent intervals. And finally, we did the photocatalytic hydrogen evolution under one sun conditions for methylene blue dyes, and you can clearly see that the copper oxide plot of photocatalytic degradation versus UV-vis. You can clearly see both different catalysis, which we are doing it for different dyes, including benzophenol, phenol, and hydroquinone. We even tried with paracetamols. All will be degrading very fast, about 180 minutes, about 3 hours, we are able to completely degrade with the dye intensities. This again is published in nanoscale journal. And the new materials which we are working on Maxine. So you may be knowing on Maxine also. Maxine on its own, it's not photocatalytic, but we wanted to make TiO2 out of Maxine itself by using plasma methods. So we started doing the usual exfoliation process. We are still not good at exfoliation. We're still working on it. And whereas the HRTM images shows that there is a Ti2C, and we did some XPS to understand what is happening in the systems. I'll just quickly show another results. So this is an in situ plasma based processes which we create, and in this plasma based systems we were this is the copper foil, and then we directly coat our material onto the glass, inside the glass, and then we pass plasma. The in situ reactions are happening, and then which resulted in degradation of dye within 30 minutes. There are different mechanisms out there which is currently under patent. Once we did all those things, we did the implementation as well directly onto the site. They extracted nanofibers along with our coated system nanoparticles with LEDs inside. We were able to degrade the dyes using the water, both a combination of anaerobic and aerobic dyes along with our photocatalytic systems, and we were able to do by 72 hours or 96 hours, we were able to completely degrade the dyes and convert them into useful water. And so we went to the plant itself and see how they are manufacturing the dyes. And during this dye injecting process, at this stage, if you see the, I'll just pass it here. Yeah. So at this stage here itself, once it mixed and then goes into the live stream, we were able to reduce our catalysis there itself. In summary, we are currently working on titania and also earth abundant graphitic carbon nitride, etc. So, so due to the lack of time, I just wanted to show how this plasma process works. So we have a dispersion. We make an ink. It could be graphene oxide. It could be TiO2. Make this as an ink and pass it directly onto the chamber, glass chamber with copper tapes or as an electrodes, and fire it into the substrates. And we are able to control these. Let me quickly see the scalable one so that you can see what we are talking. So this is the plasma where we create the plasma between the surfaces. The ink was there before, and then the reaction takes place. But this is exactly at the room temperature. So you can coat the system at room temperature using the plasma-based processes. And we were able to even do a whole deposition. And in this particular experiment, this is for silicon thermostat solar cells, organic samples which we are working on. And we are able to fine-tune the conductivity, etc., and the work function. Other is recycling batteries. I think due to the lack of time, it's already 40 minutes. So thank you very much, and thanks to all our sponsors, including EU, Royal Society, and others. I'm happy to take any other questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Satheesh. This is a very interesting presentation, and you did a lot of work in research and also in industry. Okay, maybe Mr. Adi, can you show the question from the participant? Because now we are on the discussion section. Hello, Mr. Adi Darmo. Okay, Prof. Satheesh, maybe you can see from the share screen 12 question for you, or maybe I will ask someone who wants to ask live. Anyone wants to ask live? We can open your camera and also unmute your microphone. Anyone? Just please raise your hand.
Right.
No one? Okay, okay. So maybe we can just go to this question. First question, I'm wondering to know about the many approaches you elaborate to manage wastewater containing gas. According to your vision, would you mind mentioning what approach make most powerful and efficient? Okay.
I think it is a very good question. As you can clearly see, DD CTO, it's like the reason why we are trying different materials is also for specific reasons. Once we are the lab-based work, fancy work on methylene blue may not work for in the dyes. The reason is like, see, if I see that from top to bottom, we are all contaminated with different pollutants. Because of even the dyes, shirts which we wear, different dyes are coming out. And stonewash jeans, say for example, the stonewash jeans is nothing but they really wash with a stone. And then that stone itself carries different types of minerals and organic components. So say for example, the dyes, the TiO2 or MAS2 that works for particular dye may not really more efficient for the stonewash jeans. So this is the reason why we are using different dyes. And the best approach is I always look for a simple methods for production, no fancy evaporation techniques or anything to make nanoparticles, and also earth abundant systems. So we are using currently a high-use hydrothermal methods for this synthesis. I even go for some pyrolysis method, which we are working on to make these nanoparticles and crystals. And then we spray, plasma spray onto the systems. But the more important, there are two approaches you can take. People are using powders directly. Take the powders and disperse directly into the dyes. The problem is these powders, as a function of times, coagulates and then stops the channel itself. That is the reason we wanted to integrate the nanoparticles directly onto steel or different substrates using plasma printing, which I showed you. There are many groups of dyes used in one approach, namely Fenton method, faces little difficulty in destructing dyes of azo group. What do you think? What factor is affecting? Right. The factor which I think I've already answered your question. There are two factors. One is the nature of the dyes and the nature of heavy metals present in the dyes. Each dye, say for example, in the Fenton method faces little difficulty because the Fenton method is really fixed towards the particular heavy metals. Whereas in other methods, we can the factors affecting with not only with the heavy metals, because of the heavy metals, there is other different types of organics are coming out. So Fenton methods will not be easily usable unless we introduce more photocatalytic degradation into the Fenton method.
Okay, Prof Satheesh, this is the next question. You can see in the cell screen. How long does it take to remove 100% of wastewater of waste from water? 100%.
Okay, there are. We can clear the dyes discoloration in about 5 minutes using our photocatalysis, but that is not the solution because there are still organic components and the organic residues are there inside the wastewater. Even though it shows colorless, it doesn't mean that it is a drinkable drinkable water. So for that to happen, we need to allow at least another 1 hour or 1.5 hours to kill those radicals. And still, I'm not sure whether it can be drinkable water. We are still working on that. There could be parts per million or parts per billion level of contamination is there that is still not safe, but it can be reused for the recirculation purposes in the textile process, or it can even go to plants because those are all not those are all safe to use for the plants. So in theory, the complete discoloration will happen within 5 to 10 minutes using our photocatalytic system, which we are currently, we already installed a pilot plant in India. Now we are working on Turkey on a big project. We can put, I'll type here, waste to fresh. You can see waste2fresh.eu. So if you go to that website, you can clearly see that how we are working on this 17-member consortium. We are working on real dyes, putting directly onto the multi-million factories in Turkey, in Konya, in Istanbul.
Okay, next question. Is the removal efficiency always close to 100%? I think it's already answered. Is the removal efficiency always close to 100%? Professor Satheesh, can you see the screen share?
Yeah, I can see. Well,
okay,
what
so
is
is the removal efficiency always close to 100%? In the screen, in this share screen, all question is over there, so you can read in the share screen.
You mean the chat box, right?
Yep, yeah. No, not in the chat box. In the screen.
Oh, I can't see anything on the screen.
Oh,
yeah. Ask me anything to. Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. So next question
Yeah,
is
the removal efficiency always close to 100%. Yeah, we aim for close to 100%. That is what we committed to the project. Yes.
Okay. What is the reusability of your photocatalysis?
This is a really good question. So the reusability of this catalyst is under a really good study. So as of now, we are currently working whether it's a very good question, because for commercialization, as I said, the nanofibers, etc. So in the nanofibers, we can also coat catalyst, and on the metal we can coat catalyst, but the catalyst should not leach out of the surfaces, because if it is started leaching out of the surfaces, it changes its properties. Okay, so we are currently working on the stability and reusability of the catalyst. Currently, I can confidently say up to 6 months the coating lasts, but we are still studying those. It is under study.
Okay, next
MO
question.
is a rare element. Is it possible to replace? No, I don't think MO is a rare element. It is still molybdenum sulfide is an earth-abundant system. So we are working on not an MO metal. We are working on MOS2 as a composites. It's it's an earth-abundant, and it is also what do you call non-toxic and easily scalable.
Okay. Next.
There are many of dyes. Interesting. Okay, we have answered that. The more TM method added, transition metals added, the more absorption occurred. Is it related to porosity of the material? Absolutely, it is not only related to porosity. Your TM, I mean, you mean transition metals. Is that right? So if it is more transition metals are added, it's not more actually, it is the percentage and also the layer. We are talking about the exfoliation layer. So up to 8 layers, we can control the porosity. If you get more than that, then it is a balance between the TiO2 and the MAS2 interactions. Because we need to have Ti3+ states. That's why I showed you in the X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy, the Ti3+ states is responsible for photocatalysis, and we need to maintain that hybridization between molybdenum sulfide and TiO2 to get better activity. How close the component of composites in order to be able to change the band gap? How close component?
Maybe it's related to binding, probably bonding or binding.
Yeah, how close the component of? I don't understand how close.
Or maybe related to the periodic table, probably.
I don't know how close the component of composites. Are you saying that if a TiO, so why it can be TiO2, why it can't be, why it has to be MAS2, and why it can't be like Syria, etc. So if it is the question is related to that, the component should be very close to the band gap of the host system in order to engineer the band gap. So we cannot have a system where the band gap, one is 2 eV and other one is 5 eV. We cannot do the band gap matching, even though we put a lot of nitrogen to create the vacancies, and it won't work because we cannot either substitute, or we can't even defect engineering in the sense, the idea of defect engineering is you either use oxygen vacancies or nitrogen vacancies or interstitials, which is created using by the heat or through the plasma method or through the chemical methods. But I always prefer heat and plasma method rather than the chemical methods, because the chemical methods is more of organic systems, which has its own decay rates. So to answer your question, it needs to be closer. The band gap should be closer to each other.
Okay, next.
Please show the implementation of the photocatalyst in the industrial scale, which I showed you in one of my slides. Yeah. And it is there in my website as well. If you wanted, you can please see that, which I think you can share that as well. Yeah. Part of the data shown on the visible spectra look like a beautiful approach in destructing dye. What about in the UV region? Right. We are focused on visible light. As I clearly said, we only have a 4% of the UV radiation coming into from the sun. So we wanted to, if I go to the industry and say that I'm putting UV light, and if the UV light fails, we are all dead. So we wanted to use an LED, tunable LEDs, to the region. So that's the reason why we are using visible light. And it should be non-expensive. In the decoloration of dyes, it can be happen due to both adsorption and degradation process. Which one goes first, especially in your research case? Why? Okay. So the one which I can show about the excuse me. In our case, in MAS2 TiO2 systems, so we particularly choose adsorption first. Particular adsorption at higher loading and photocatalysis at the lower loading. So if the photocatalysis, as I explained in the previous slide, thanks for this question. So the lower the loading, we have a better Ti3 plus and MO3D states interactions. The higher the loading, it's MAS2 takes the presidency, and MAS2 is involved in absorption of the organics faster. So it's a two-stage process. We have did the batch processing, adsorption, and the catalytic activity. Next question. Right. Yeah, please. Which is better? Photocatalysis or adsorption of dye waste product? I think it's both. Okay, next. The last how one. To ensure the result of the process are not more hazardous compounds or materials? Very, very good question. This is what we are working on. So one way we are saying that we are creating clean water, and we have to make sure that the things are not leaching out. I think I can share, but it is still under commercialized patenting process. So we did some really hardcore work on ICP-MS. ICP-MS is nothing but inductive coupled plasma mass spectroscopy, where we can detect parts per billion level of impurities. So during our process, we are not able to see that we have did some batch processing. We are not able to see any hazardous compounds coming out of using our processes. But having said that, it has to be a lifetime test has to be done, and which is under process. Okay. So yeah, is there any question? Okay, so it's enough. Okay, so thank you very much, Professor Satheesh, for the sharing knowledge in here. So I hope it would be open a way for further collaboration, maybe if anyone here wants to collaborate with you. So especially thank you very much, because you are willing to come here to give a little bit sharing your research. So thank you. And then before we close, can we have or take a photo together probably? Please open your camera, all the participants. Maybe we can
has a photo together. Okay, so I will take. Please be ready. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, next. Change the last one. Okay. Okay. Okay, so thank you very much, Professor Satheesh. See you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your patience, and have a good evening and stay safe.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you. Bye. See you.
Bye.
Oke, terima kasih.